Welcome to 2020 Legislative Assembly, How General Sessions Work Virtually. We are so excited to have you join us for the 42nd Annual Washington State PTA Legislative Assembly. This year we're going virtual, so things will be different than in the past. If this is your first time attending Legislative Assembly, you're probably full of questions, but even delegates who have attended in the past need to understand the many changes due to this year's virtual format. There will be two other videos for this year's Legislative Assembly. One focuses on what first-timers need to know, and the other focuses on caucusing and amendments. Please watch these other videos as appropriate. Here are some important dates for you. This year's event launches on September 29th with the first Education Q&A caucus sessions. These sessions, as well as classes and panels, will run throughout the month of October, ending with our general sessions on October 24th and 25th. Laptops and desktops are recommended for full functionality on Zoom, but attendees may join the meeting on any computer or smart device with an internet connection. After logging into Zoom, all attendees will be muted and will not have their cameras on. On the Washington State PTA website, the Legislative Assembly page is found under Events and Programs. There you will find all of the information you need about registration, voting delegates, schedule of events, voting information, and more. If you find you have questions that can't be answered on the website, please email support@wastatepta.org to get your questions answered. There's also a Legislative Assembly newsletter you will receive as soon as you register. If you'd like to start receiving the newsletter before you're able to register, you can sign up by updating your Constant Contact profile by clicking on the footer of any of our newsletters that you receive, including leadership news. Then select the Legislative Assembly newsletter. Old editions of the newsletter are linked towards the bottom, so please go back and read any issues you may have missed. Any member of a local PTA may be an attendee by registering by the October 8th registration deadline. This year's attendee registration fee is only $25 for adults and $10 for students, and includes access to all classes and materials, educational opportunities, caucusing, and general sessions. Attendees who are not authorized as voting delegates by their local PTA or council president by the required October 6th deadline may attend but not participate in the general sessions at Legislative Assembly on October 24th and 25th. The voting delegate registration fee is the same as for attendees, but these members have also been authorized as voting delegates by their local PTA or council president by the required October 6th deadline. Voting delegates may attend and participate in the debate and voting in general sessions of Legislative Assembly on October 24th and 25th on behalf of their local PTA or council. Please note that although anyone registered may attend the caucus sessions, only registered voting delegates may submit motions to amend standing rules, legislative principles, issues, or resolutions, as well as debate, speak, and vote in general sessions. On the Legislative Assembly website, you'll find all the information you need to help you understand how to register and how to become a voting delegate. You must begin by registering to attend Legislative Assembly. To register, adult attendees can go to the main Legislative Assembly page and look for the green registration button. There are also links for both student and adult registrations on the General Information page. Remember, the registration fee is only $25 for adults and $10 for students, so take advantage of this great deal and send as many voting delegates as your PTA is allocated. The next step is to be authorized as a voting delegate, and that involves your local PTA or council president. You must be authorized as a voting delegate to submit amendments and motions, speak during general sessions, and vote. Go to the voting information page and scroll down until you see delegate information, and then click the drop-down for voting delegate information. At least one president for each PTA will be sent an email containing a link to a survey form that must be used to identify authorized voting delegates. If you have co-presidents, please coordinate who will complete the survey. The survey form linked to the email will contain spaces for the number of delegates your PTA is allowed according to Washington State PTA bylaws. If a president is a voting delegate, you must include them in the list of delegates on this survey form. Your list of delegates must be completed and submitted to the Washington State PTA office no later than 11:59 p.m. on October 6th. If a president does not turn in the names by this date, the attendees will not be eligible to be a voting delegate. Each voting delegate is allowed to represent only one PTA, so a voting delegate will not be able to vote for both a local PTA and a council. If the Washington State PTA office receives a duplicate name, we will let both the local PTA and the council know. This survey form can be completed before or after the member registers. The on-screen confirmation for this form includes a link to the registration payment form for your convenience. Identifying a member as a delegate does not register the member to attend. A registration payment form must also be completed. Delegates must be a paid member of the PTA, and the PTA must be in good standing. A reminder that submitters will need to make sure they are a voting delegate to be able to speak and vote for their proposal. Now that you've heard how to become a voting delegate, it's time to find out how to become an informed voting delegate. You have some homework to do. Hopefully you were able to attend some of the education Q&A caucus sessions to learn directly from the position submitters. In addition, the Legislative Assembly page of the website has several resources to help you become an informed and prepared voting delegate. Go to the voting information page and you will find the following documents for your review. The 2020 Voters Guide will give you the details of all of the proposals being debated at Legislative Assembly. You will be able to read each proposed position, a persuasive statement from the submitter, as well as the Washington State PTA Board of Directors recommendation. Proposed changes to any existing positions are shown as strike-through for deletions and as bold underline font for additions. Please note that only the parts in the shaded boxes are open for amendment and debate. The 2020 proposed standing rules should be reviewed in advance as well. Proposed amendments to the standing rules are due October 5th. The How Things Work Guide is a multi-page document that has details about everything related to our virtual event. It covers everything from the education Q&A caucus sessions, how to submit an amendment to either the proposed standing rules or a proposed position, speech and debate, voting, and more. Please review this document in advance. And finally, the 2020 Advocacy Survey is a survey link you can share with members of your local PTA or council to see what their opinions on the proposed positions are. During Legislative Assembly, you will hear more information about each proposal and debate on its merits. It is recommended to keep an open mind about proposals and obtain from your PTA an ability to vote your conscience based on what you learn at Legislative Assembly. Remember, only voting delegates, including student voting delegates, have the right to make motions, speak and debate, or vote during general sessions. Speech and debate during general sessions will be completely different this year due to our virtual format. All attendees will have their cameras off, and attendees will be muted unless recognized to speak by the chair. Instead of a total debate time clock that runs down while we're trying to unmute speakers, debate on the main motion to adopt each principle, issue, or resolution will be limited to 3 speakers in favor and 3 speakers opposed. Debate on all other debatable motions will be limited to 2 speakers in favor and 2 speakers opposed. The speaker list will be closed after we reach these speaker limits. The speaker list will be shown on screen so that speakers can see when their turn is coming up. Once this limit of speakers has been heard on a main motion, debate will be closed and the vote will be taken on that main motion. All speeches are limited to 90 seconds and the speaker time clock will show on screen. For principles, issues, and resolutions, the first speaker in favor and the first speaker opposed may be designated by the attendees of the corresponding caucus. Just as if this was a normal in-person legislative assembly, a voting delegate may request to speak on a motion only after it has been introduced, except for that first speaker as determined by the caucus. The speakers list for each motion will not be open in advance. After the introduction of a principle, issue, or resolution, one delegate may speak in favor, followed by one speaker against for the main motion as a whole. We will then consider all pre-filed amendments for the position, followed by the remaining debate on the main motion as a whole. At the conclusion of the first speech in favor, if no delegate wants to speak in opposition and there are no amendments, the vote on the main motion will be taken without further debate. No voting delegate may speak more than twice on the pending motion, and no one may speak a second time on any motion before someone who wants to speak for the first time on that motion. A voting delegate wishing to speak in favor of the proposal should type "Speak Pro" and those wishing to speak against a proposal should type "Speak Con" into the Zoom chat to be added to the speakers list. Delegates must first be recognized by the chair in order to speak. Delegates will then be unmuted by staff, and then delegates should state their name and local PTA or council name and number before beginning their speech. While amendments to positions need to be pre-filed, there are other types of motions delegates may wish to make. A voting delegate who wishes to make a motion should send the text of the motion using the Zoom chat feature. After recognition by the chair, the voting delegate making the motion will be unmuted and will say, "I move that," or "I move to," followed by the motion. Before the motion can be discussed, it must be seconded by another voting delegate by typing "second" into the Zoom chat. The purpose of the second is to be sure that someone else wants to consider the idea. If there's no second, the matter is dropped and does not come before the meeting for discussion. Once a motion has been made and seconded, it will be stated by the chair, and then the chair will ask for discussion. The maker of the motion will be the first person to speak. If your motion is not in order at the time, for instance, it isn't relevant or germane, the chair will rule the motion out of order. As a reminder, secondary amendments, that is, amendments to amendments, will not be permitted. A voting delegate who has a request for information will type out and send the question using the Zoom Q&A feature. The Points of Order and Inquiries monitor will read the question aloud when called on by the chair. If the question does not relate to the pending motion, the chair will rule the question out of order at the current time. What is a request for information? Basically, it's a question asking for some factual information that relates to the current business. As an example, let's say the current motion is to spend some money to advertise for a banquet. It may be useful for you to know how much money is currently in the account before deciding how to vote on the motion. A request for information could be, quote, "Would the treasurer please tell us how much money is available in the account?" The chair will take this up before recognizing the next speaker. The inquiry must be a specific question to ask for factual information. It must not be to make a point in rebuttal or to clarify a point made in debate. Rhetorical questions are debate, not requests for information. The chair will respond to your question or ask someone to answer, and there will be no further discussion. A voting delegate who has a parliamentary inquiry will type out and send the question using the Zoom Q&A feature. The Points of Order Inquiries monitor will read the question aloud when called upon by the chair. A parliamentary inquiry is similar to a request for information, and it is handled in the same way. The difference is that while a request for information asks for factual information, a parliamentary inquiry asks a procedural question. Basically, it's a question when a voting delegate does not understand something being discussed or what is happening during the meeting. Sometimes the issues get confusing and you don't know which motion is being discussed. You may have a question on the effect of a vote under consideration, or you may not know if it's currently okay to make a particular motion. Don't sit there if your question needs to be clarified before the vote is taken. The chair will take this up before recognizing the next speaker. The inquiry must be a specific question to ask a procedural question. The chair will answer the question or may ask someone else to answer. A voting delegate who wishes to raise a point of order will type out and send the point of order using the Zoom Q&A feature. If a voting delegate believes a procedural rule is being violated or ignored, they may raise a point of order. Points of order will be ruled on by the chair, subject to appeal by the delegates. Voting will happen at multiple times throughout the general sessions. A reminder that only voting delegates can vote and that they are voting on behalf of their local PTA or council. For most votes during general sessions, we will be using the Zoom polling feature. The poll will show on screen, and voting delegates will be given sufficient time to vote before the results are shown on screen. Attendees who are not authorized voting delegates may not vote. We will also be using batch voting to be respectful of time. We will take a single batch vote on a group of issues or resolutions together without debate or amendment. Separate batch votes will be taken Saturday for issues and Sunday for resolutions. Positions will be included in the batch vote if no amendments were reported to the Assembly by the Amendments Committee. The list of positions in the batch vote will be shown on screen and read by the chair. Before the vote is taken, any voting delegate may request that an individual issue or resolution be pulled from the batch for debate and separate vote. Voting delegates will pull a position by typing in the chat the name or number of the position they wish to pull. For example, I want to pull the SEL resolution, or I want to pull resolution number 5. For our top 5 voting, we will use Election Buddy. Ballots will be emailed to all registered voting delegates after we have completed the consideration of all proposed issues. Delegates will be allowed to vote for up to 5 issues. They may vote for less, but not more than 5 issues. Our top 5 is determined by a plurality vote, meaning the 5 issues that get the most votes will make our top 5. Results will be reported to the Assembly Sunday afternoon. Legislative Assembly is a wonderful opportunity to discover what makes PTA such an effective advocacy organization, the passion of its members. Legislative Assembly is one of those opportunities where you really get out of it as much as you put into it. Attend the Education Q&A caucus sessions, as well as the classes and panels to learn more about the work we do as PTA. And then attend the general sessions where we adopt new positions to help us advocate for every child. Many attendees comment that by going through this process, they come to recognize that PTA is much more than fundraisers. Legislative Assembly is how we truly engage in our mission of being a strong advocate for the well-being and education of every child. Come along, it's a fun ride. Thank you, and we hope you enjoy this year's Washington State PTA Legislative Assembly.